True Fulfillment in Christ by Stephanie M. Seaton. Heart Restored. Finding True Fulfillment in Christ. In this book, we embark on a journey that explores the depths of human longing and the pursuit of true fulfillment.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Stephanie M. Seaton Sunday Show. I am so glad you have tuned in with us tonight. We have got Mr. Dre Hill tonight. He is an artist, a storyteller, a writer, a poet, an entertainer, and an educator. I just got you telling them I don't know which titles to go by, but listen, this young man is doing some amazing things. Welcome, Mr. Dre. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Doing good. I'm so happy to have you here. We finally were able to link up. We scheduled this a while back, but I'm so glad that we have the opportunity to talk tonight. I had the opportunity to meet Mr. Dre, I guess about 2 or 3 months ago now. We were both at a event, and he spoke and did one of his poems. Very moving, very touching, especially for such a young man. And I was just like, listen, I've got to have you on my podcast. I want to talk to you and let you, showcase what you're doing. Definitely just supportive of people in general, but especially young people that already have a plan, already have a purpose, and know what they want to do. It's making a difference. And so I definitely wanted you to be here tonight, Dre, so we could talk, kind of find out a little bit more about you. Now, listen, the very first question that I usually ask all of my guests, tell us, who is Dre Hill?
Yes. So obviously, some of those titles I would say kind of encompass and embody who I am. But I think at the core, I'm just somebody who likes to have fun, who leads with his heart, and has a passion for connecting with other people in a bunch of different ways.
Okay, very good. Do me a favor. Can you turn the volume down on your other item? Yeah, we can hear it through the okay, there you go.
The mic. Okay.
Very good, very good. Well, I tell you what, I'm excited about the things that you've done. You know, I did a little research on you, and so I kind of was looking at all the different works that you have put together. And one of the things I really wanted to know, I used to write poetry initially back in high school.
Works that you
have I wrote poetry in high school and was really inspired, but I never really did anything with it. The volume got louder. I wrote poetry in high school and was really inspired, but I never really did anything with it. The volume got louder. Dre, can you hear that?
The echo?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Dre, can you hear that?
The echo?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Do you have another device on the live? No? Okay, hold on just a minute.
The echo?
Okay, there we go. That's better.
Okay, perfect.
You good? Okay.
Yes, there we go.
Yeah, okay. All right, so we were talking about the fact that I've kind of done some background and looked at the different projects that you've already worked on, some amazing things that you're doing. My first question, I really want to know, when did you realize that you had the love of poetry and writing? How early did that happen for you?
So it's a very whenever I talk to people about this, they're always very like kind of taken aback because I've been writing my whole life. And I've been interested in literature my whole life, but poetry is something that I had weeks left to go in my senior year, my spring semester, and I was in my English seminar class one night, not paying attention. I should have been, but not paying attention. And professor was lecturing or whatever, and I was just in my notes app, and I was just kind of writing things down, and that really was I'd written a poem or two prior, but that for me really was kind of like the actual start of my career, because that was I think one of the first like impactful poems that I'd written, and it was one of the first poems that I had written for Crossroads. And after that, it was like I got bit with the bug, so I just kind of kept writing, and things kind of kept flowing and going, and we went from there.
Do you find that your poetry is therapeutic? Is it like therapy for you?
It definitely is.
Yeah.
I am an artist through and through, so for me, anything creative typically is something that I can tap into to either channel emotion or release emotion. But writing is one of those things that for me is like always readily available. I can't always necessarily sit down and paint or set up shop and photograph or whatever, but even on a car ride, I can write in my notes, or if it's stable enough, I can write in a journal. So that there's always something with that.
Right.
And I'm usually always ready to go on the writing front just in case.
I love that. I love that. So let's talk a little bit about your family. Are you an only child? Do you have siblings? Tell us a little bit about you, the man.
Yes. So I am not an only child. I have an older sister and a younger brother, both of whom are very like impactful and inspirational as a part of my experience as a person, but also just like creatively, because we're also like very different and unique. But I think that's what allows each of us to kind of shine differently as individuals and in relation to the other siblings. But they're always so super supportive, and we always, really rally around each other as siblings and just as a family in general.
Yeah.
So it's really cool because we're all creative, but in different ways. I'm like the full like hipster artsy vibe, and then my sister is creative, but like in a planner, decorator, styler kind of way. And then my brother is like a creative, analytical type kind of, just because of his interest in like animals and caregiving, because he wants to be a vet and things like that. So a lot of different like types and typecasts going on there, but we all have a lot of like similar interests, creatively speaking, which is kind of some of the threads that we can kind of connect with each other on. And then my parents, I feel like there's a little bit more variety there. I do feel like I get a lot of my creative juice, a lot of my creative oomph from my mom, because she used to write and even sketched a little bit back in the day. So I feel like there's a genetic trait there.
It sounds like it.
Yeah.
I mean, all three of your siblings are artistic or creative. That's not normal, Dre.
Yeah.
That's not normal. So okay, now we see they got it. What's that old phrase? You got it from your mom.
Right. Yeah, I got it from my mom.
Okay, so your mom also is a writer. Okay, very cool. That is cool. Okay, very good. What did faith look like growing up for you? What did faith look like?
Yeah, so we grew up in the church, and we all pretty much still attend the same church for right now. So it's with the exception of like college and stuff and people moving and everything,
Right.
We've pretty much been rooted in the same faith-based community our whole lives, which has been really cool. And being able to like exist in that in different stages of life, because people get to see you grow, you get to see other people grow. But you also get to meet new people because people leave, new people come.
Right.
So it's been really cool. And it's been great for me to stretch myself, because of my siblings, I'm not the most like socially outgoing, and you probably wouldn't know that off rip, because I play it very well. I'm very personable, and you think that like, oh, he just came up to me randomly, started talking, but it's like, listen, if I didn't do this, I either was going to sit in the corner awkwardly somewhere, or someone would come up to me, and then the spot's on me. So if I put it on somebody else, then it's like, oh, he's like,
I didn't
but a
pick
lot of
that
that
up.
has it's required some of that growth, because it's like, I've been here and then I left, and then these are new people. So, I have to make use of those skills, and it's continued to serve me in other ways. So it's holistically been a great experience for me.
Okay. Yes, that we do have to push ourselves out of our comfort zone, right? Okay, very good. Now, I was looking and I saw that you recently graduated from college back in 2021. So you are now teaching. You're in education in Fort Worth area. Tell me, what is that like, and how do you get to incorporate your love of writing and artistry? How does that work?
So, this isn't official yet, but I just recently got like a new job teaching wise, and so that has been a bit of a transition, because it's more in the animation side of my field. But as far as like engaging with the other forms of arts, community events, connecting with students who have some of those interests and passions. I taught a year of college at one point, also animation based, but a lot of those kids, they have those other foundational skills and diverging interests that all intersect to make for the more complete storyteller. And so what I found is most creatives are like creative through and through. They like to do a bunch of different things, and if you put something in their hands, they're going to make something out of it. And maybe not like the most orthodox thing, but someone's going to start paper macheing, somebody's going to start painting, and somebody's going to start like burning paper and doing like a collage or a sculpture. So so that's what my experience has been like. I connecting with people who have those kind of interests, and guiding them when and where I can, but also like developing community with myself and other people outside of like the work concept and the confines, and going to find like local scenes and doing things like where we met, doing events like that as well.
Yeah, I think that's good. Now we're going to go ahead and claim that job. You said it wasn't quite final, but we're going to go ahead and claim that, Dre. So we're going to go ahead and claim that. And then the good thing about it is I heard you say that it has to do with animation. Of course, you have a bachelor's in animation and writing. So that's going to be right in line with, your degree. So we're going to go ahead and just believe by faith that you already have that position. And that's going to be a, continued blessing for you. When you hear the word healing, empowerment, and transformation, which one of those words stands out the most for you?
Whew,
I know, big words, right?
Yeah. And I'm always bad at, you got to pick one or your
Yeah,
favorite or narrow it down. That's always hard for me. So I'm like, I'm not that kind of person. But I would say healing, and just to, kind of directly tie that to me, my poetry journey so far has been one of great catharsis and great healing, not just for me, but like especially for me, but presumably for a lot of the people that have read the work and connected with the work. Anything from, someone's read my collection of poems about relationships and like, yo, I was going through a breakup and this resonated, to reading the collection Crossroads or No, I Am Not Okay, and being like, yo, like this spoke to my struggles with mental health or like dealing with grief, or just feeling like I'm struggling with navigating growing up and finding myself. And so that's, like I said, going back to us talking about therapy and everything, art is therapeutic for me. And it's a great way to hash things out that sometimes I can't articulate. I'm not sure that I have the language or the vocabulary for, but I know what it feels like. And I can find a way to paint that picture and put it on the page or in the photograph or whatever. And so for me, healing's kind of that line that I'm writing right now.
I love that. I love that. And you know what? So many of us are struggling with different things and we don't have outlets. And so, I had spoke to you earlier and, was telling you that for me, writing is healing for me and therapy for me. And, I'm hearing you saying the same thing. It's so important to find an outlet, something that makes you happy, something that helps, give you a place to express your thoughts and your feelings. So, I know a lot of times in our culture, in our community, and we hear it so much with mental health and mental illness and just different things, period. When you use that M word, we never want to talk about it. We don't want to address it. We want to pretend that everybody's okay.
Yeah.
But the reality of the situation is everybody goes through things. And sometimes we just need to really look in the mirror and really, do the best things for ourselves and get ourselves some therapy and some help. And so I commend you for being brave enough to write about those things as well, Mr. Dre. So I commend you for that. Let's talk a little bit about your poetry in your book, Dre Hill's Poet. And kind of share with me, what was the concept behind this particular piece of work? What was the concept?
So as far as just, what comes to mind with me and poetry in general, I'm a very like life-based creative, like I can make things up, yes, but for me, the authenticity is riding the line between where I fold the fantasy into the reality. So with anything I've written that's been published and with any of my books, there's a level of truth and realism in every poem and throughout the narrative of the book. Even if I pretty it up with some imaginary, situations or circumstances or characters, but there's a through line, and that ties back into like the healing component, because there's something there that is unsaid, unresolved, or needs to be worked through, or we're putting closure on it. But wrapping it in a way that, like, there is also that level of distance. So, I'm telling you my business, but I'm not telling you all.
Without telling your business.
Exactly. But at the same time, then, like, I gave you my business and you're like, oh, this is my business too. And it's like, okay, cool. You have that connection with the work, but that's between you. At that point, it's you and the work. No one else is going to know. And if you share it with me, that's one of those like special, beautiful things. Like, thank you for sharing. And I'm grateful that you had this connection, but that's between us, and that's a special thing between me and my readers. And I'll share like words maybe, but I'll never necessarily share if there's specifics that they give me. I'm never sharing that. But if there's like this help me through a dark time, I might share that, because it's good for people to see, like, hey, like, read this thing. They said this. Read the work, But yeah.
Okay, so that is Dre Hill's Poet. Tell us a little bit about Crossroads. What is the synopsis or overview of Crossroads?
Yes. So I don't remember the synopsis off the top of my head. So I'll give you a little backstory and just like a snippet of what it's about. So When I'm engaging with people and kind of pitching them what Crossroads is, I always tell them that it's autobiographical poetry or poetic memoir. So it is very much like my life, and the most like my life, my business of anything I've written or published. And it just kind of takes you through the story of me growing up from, early childhood till about 21, 22 when I graduated college, because that is when I initially wrote the book. It's the first book that I wrote. It's not the first one that I published, but it's the first book that I wrote. So when I wrote it, I was kind of chronicling life up until that point, because by the time that I'd graduated, it's that big thing that happens to most grads. Like I had all these dreams and visions for myself, and they're still there, but I also don't know what I'm doing. And the world may or may not look different from how I imagined it because of whatever, COVID or whatever other opportunities are happening. What do I do now? And so I was in this place where I felt like, I don't know what's going on. I know who I think I want to be, but I'm not sure, and I'm not sure how to get there. And so Crossroads, writing it and putting that narrative together was really just chronologing my journey, everything I'd experienced up to that point, good, bad, ugly, and kind of like, all right, the story's not over. So this is us looking towards the future for something else.
Okay. What would you say to someone that's thinking about becoming a writer or a poet, and maybe they're overthinking the process? Because when I'm talking to other writers, from the book perspective, a lot of us talk ourselves out of it because we're worried about what people are going to think. We're always thinking about people, right? But what would you tell someone that is thinking about becoming a poet or a writer? And even if, what would you tell your younger self? Would you have gotten started sooner? Like, what advice would you give to yourself or to someone?
Yes, I love getting asked about advice, because there's so much that I pick up along the way that I'm like, oh, this is good, but this isn't me. I stole it. But then there's also like, this is my experience.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I would tell anyone, and even my younger self, is, just start. Or if you've started, like, keep going and keep trying. Because Crossroads, I literally was just writing like a poem or two a day at random, ad nauseum. It was just happening. And then I blinked from May to August, and I had enough for, a manuscript. So I was trying to figure out how to put that together, what that process was. And this was me, no real experience, hadn't really looked into it yet. I was just like, it's happening. So we're going to go with the flow. But a lot of people don't even get to that stage. They get scared of the writing, or they get daunted. They don't think they're good enough. They didn't have the courses or the grades or whatever the case is, or they've been told like, oh, you're a boring storyteller, no one's going to read it, whatever. And what I've increasingly learned to be true is that you have something to say.
Yes.
No one can say it like you can say it.
Right.
There are people who are going to need it and who are going to want it. And you don't need to be formally trained. You don't need all the classes. Like, yes, knowing all of the rules and conventions of writing, whether it's fiction, essays and academic work, research, poetry, whatever, knowing the rules of convention are great, but it's more so important to know how to make that stuff interesting, or how to bend them to what fits you and what makes you and your voice unique, your message and your delivery unique. So that would be my biggest thing. Like, just do it. I think the other thing that I think is really important that a lot of people don't necessarily think about or talk about is the concept of community, because community is great, not just for like, hey, like, give me feedback, but like, you're not the only one in the trenches writing, like the other people are too. And so not only can you get feedback when stuff is done, which usually takes a while, but you can get feedback in the midst of things, or you can get inspiration, or you can get
in the process. Yeah,
exactly. Or just that encouragement, like, hey, keep going. I know it's tough right now, or like you're struggling with balancing the writing with life or whatever, but like, we got you. Keep going. We want to read it. We'll check back in a couple of weeks with updates to see how things are going. But people don't realize how important community is from like the creation standpoint, like starting and ideating to publishing to then like putting it out there and like marketing and continue to market and the rest of your career. Like it's so important, and we need each other to exist and to
Right.
survive and to thrive. So not
Definitely.
only just do it, surround yourself with other people who are just doing it and who have been doing it, that have a genuine interest in you and your work and what you have to say, because they'll have your best interest in heart when they provide you feedback and critique. And critique is not a bad thing. And just because someone says they don't think that this works doesn't mean that it can't or it won't. You have to use your own discernment with your story and what you're saying. But it's really just the idea of like, these elements are great, or these elements work. These elements might need tweaking or adjustment to really elevate or take this to the next level.
Let me ask you this, Dre. I've been going to quite a few like open mics and kind of listening to different poets and speakers. Was that something that you did in the beginning to kind of get comfortable with the whole concept of expressing your poetry? Do you recommend that, or kind of tell me about that?
So I actually am, or I guess I should say that I was a little late to the open mic scene. I think when I had first started going to open mics, I was like months away from publishing my first book. So I had been writing poetry at this point, not really sharing it with anyone per se, except some of my like writing buddies from college and like family and friends. But I wasn't really necessarily doing a whole bunch of that. However, once I started, it made it easier to, like I said, foster some of that community, because I keep in contact with those folks. And I haven't been to any in a while, but when I make it, it's always a good reunion. We catch up. How's life? How's your family? How's your kids? How's the job? What's new? All of that good stuff. And so my big thing is, yes, like I recommend stuff like that, even if you don't want to go to perform, or you feel like performance is not your thing, you don't want to read, you want to share, that's fine. But talking about community building, that's like an easy instant community there. And a lot of those events are either hosted at good hubs for connection, like a coffee shop or a bookstore. Another big community hub, coffee shop too. So those are opportunities to put yourself in position for other things as well. So I recommend it, and like I said, you don't ever have to go and share if you don't want to or ever feel inclined. But if you feel like performance and like engaging with people with your work beyond the page is something you want to do, even if you want to do like events and signings, like that gives you an intimate setting to practice some of those like personal communication skills and being in front of a crowd and pronouncing and all of the things that are going to be beneficial for when you have a room of 150, 200 or more people packed because they want to come see you, get you to sign their book or so I do recommend it for sure.
I've been going to so many recently that I'm actually thinking about kind of exploring the poetry route again. Like I said, when I was in high school and middle school, I wrote poetry. I've become obsessed with writing books, but it kind of took, it's kind of been it's kind of like I feel alive in that area again, if that makes sense. Like I'm like, okay, I can do this. I can sit and think about this. And so I've kind of talked to somebody. I'm thinking that I may enter an open mic here soon.
Yeah.
Do a little something,
I love that. Right. But the thing about open mics too is like, I think people have this, if they haven't been, they have this notion that it's like this super stuck up, like you got to come ready, come prepared. That's not it's super laid back. It's super chill.
So fun.
I want to encourage you. Exactly. It's such a vibe. So if you're like worried about like, oh, I'm going to fumble through my words, that's okay. There are seasoned poets who will forget whole poems mid-performance and they'll have to switch to a different poem or what. We're human. It happens. The whole purpose is to go and have fun, have a good time, get encouraged, so that because even if you are going to like sing or do comedy or whatever, it's good to knock the rust off or to have a new audience to practice the material with. And it's just good to be in the community of other people creating and doing things. So yes, I'm excited to hear that.
You keep saying that key word, and I want to talk about that community. Community is a big deal because we need each other, whether you're an author, a writer, or poet, whatever facet of the writing or entertainment industry, networking is very important because networking gives you the opportunity to meet people, diverse people, first of all, diverse people, and to have opportunities that you may not have been afforded to or even thought about, but it opens your mindset up. And that's kind of what I was kind of alluding to. I probably would have never thought about tapping back into poetry or thinking about an open mic if I hadn't been going to these events recently. I've been going as a vendor, but in the process of me going there with my books, I'm sitting there like, I really enjoy this. Like, when someone forgets, everybody still applauds them, everybody's encouraging them. I mean, I'm like, wow, okay, so it's okay. So it's been very neat. And once upon a time I thought with poetry that everything had to rhyme. And then I realized, no, hey, you're laughing at me, Dre. Okay.
No, it's funny because I taught my first workshop in April, and I feel like for most people who don't have the formal education, that is like the biggest misnomer, that it either needs to be like a sonnet, like something Shakespearean, or it needs to rhyme like Mother Goose. And there are forms of poetry that follow those veins, but there's so much more beyond that that is not required. So I'm laughing because it's like everybody thinks that until they find out. I was like, oh, I had no idea. And they're like, oh, thank God.
I had no idea. When I saw the different forms, there's some that's raw, that's deep. There's some with music, and and I'm just like, wow. And I'm the whole time I'm sitting there like this. I'm like, wow. I love it. I love it. So yeah, definitely. It's a whole vibe on its own. And just a very comfortable atmosphere. So I know how you could fall in love with it. Any type of expression, and being able to creatively express thoughts and feelings. And we do have the ability as writers to be able to hide behind the words, and kind of mix it with how we feel versus how someone else may feel. And, but it's all a way of expression. And I love that. I love it. I love it. Tell me a little bit about, and I saw that you have a book called No, I'm Not Okay. Let's kind of talk a little bit about that as much as you would like to. Kind of tell us, what are we talking about? Why do we need to go grab that book? Because the title in itself makes me want to go get the book. Because like we said earlier, there's so many people going through things. A lot of people won't even say they're not okay. We're just smiling and just shaking our heads and just going through the motion. We're showing up. Not so long ago, Dre, about maybe a month or two ago, I did a conference on my women's ministry group called Hiding Behind the Lipstick. And it was talking about how we put on the lipstick, the lashes, the wigs, we put on all the stuff. And we show up and we look the part and we do the stuff because that's what's expected. But then when we get home, we are alone, we're broken, we're crying, we're having those whole meltdowns. So first of all, let me tell you, I'm proud of you. I salute you for writing a book with that title, No, I'm Not Okay. Because that takes so much courage and so much strength in itself. Tell us, what is this project about?
Yes. So, I mentioned that Crossroads is like the most personal in terms of like my life holistically. I would say that No, I Am Not Okay is kind of like, without being too much of my business, it's kind of like the best snapshot glimpse at kind of like my own journeys with mental health. There are some poems in there that are like very specifically targeted and written basically about me, and that I've thrown in and veiled in between other poems. So you kind of have to do your own digging to try and decipher. I think Dre might have wrote this about himself or whatever, but at its core, you talked about, we pretend that we're fine, we pretend that we're okay. And to be honest, I have been one of those people where like my generic and default response is, how are you doing, Dre? I'm good, I'm okay, smile, because that's just like the coping mechanism. But I've experienced a lot throughout my life, but especially college till now, just a lot of different instances of things that cause trauma and traumatic stress disorder and other just issues going on through life, dealing with periods of depression and burnout and what that is like. And you touched base on how, especially when it ties into the community as a race of people, and then factoring in faith. A lot of us, everything's fine. Pray it away. It'll be good. And the reality is yes, pray and things will be okay, but that is not like the end all be all. Sometimes the okay is you pray and you get sent a doctor and the doctor sends you a prescription, or you go to therapy, and that is where the okay begins to take shape. So I started writing this book, I think in 2022. And I was on vacation in Costa Rica, which you would think, oh, that's beautiful locale, great scenery. Why are you writing this in Costa Rica? But I was on the way to the airport heading home, and it was just like torrential rain the whole ride. And something in me just kind of welled up. And so I wrote one of the poems. And I think that poem is "I Killed Myself, What Now?" And it's basically like a referendum on, we're getting rid of the old self, and positioning and posturing for the newer self, the more healed self, the self that is going to be open and honest about where we are, so we can receive help, so we can receive treatment. And religion is veiled all through that collection because it's a prominent like centerpiece of my experience. And I think for a lot of people, we kind of crutch our abilities, our sicknesses, or whatever on like, have faith, it'll be healed. That's it. That's all. And while yes, faith will get things healed, sometimes the healing will require other steps that you have to be faithful in following. So a lot of that is yes, all of that's important. And a lot of that is kind of what ties in. And I love that you mentioned about, the putting on the lipstick in your ministry, because I have two very specific poems. One of them is not in this collection. It's in a follow-up collection that I have on the horizon. But I have one poem in this book called "Black Men Don't Cry." And it's about the stigma of, as a Black man and as a man, like, you're not allowed to cry. And that one is one of the ones that is like really about me. And it gets very personal and about my experience with, I used to kind of cry freely as a young kid. And then it just kind of stopped. And then some of the societal conditioning kind of kicked in as well. So it really just got stunted. And so now I'm at a place where like, I'm trying to pull back and tamper all of the clamps on, my emotions and my expression. And so it's a lot of undoing, because the body will get hardwired and conditioned. And so I cry now, but it's not the way that it used to be. And sometimes I'm not necessarily able to always express that. And so I'm like having to open new pathways to access that in ways that are healthy for myself, because crying is a natural part of our body, not just from like a cleansing perspective of like, clearing our eyes out, but like cleansing ourselves emotionally so we can make space and make room. Exactly. But this whole book, outside of just being like a big, status or statute to myself and my experience, is saying, hey, most of us are going through something in this book. You're dealing with substance abuse, you're dealing with trauma and PTSD, you're dealing with grief or something, and that is having negative outlooks because you're not seeking help, you're not telling people that you need help, and you're not being provided with resources. And so I'm hoping that through this book and subsequent books, we'll kind of continue to push that needle.
Okay. I love that. Just the fact that you're so open, vulnerable, transparent. Those are my words. I love that. That's kind of my my call and my passion is to be real, because I don't know how to be anything other than real. But the Lord told me to be real, transparent. And when I minister on my platform, when I talk to people about things, that's what I'm called to do. And so I don't just tell the peaches and the cream and the rose petal type stories. I tell the real stuff that I went through and that I struggled and how I got delivered, because, the Lord needs more people that can tell real life stuff. And I like how you said, yes, we pray. Yes, we speak the word, but there are times when you have to go through a process. and that's real life. And so I commend you for saying that, Dre. But yeah, and see, that's the difference between traditional and real life. you
Mm.
know Tradition is I'm going to pray for you and walk away, and nobody thinks to actually pray for you. Real life is you stop right there and you pray for that person, and you let them know that they're not alone, or you go ahead and hug that person that needs a hug, and tell them it's going to be okay, and let them know therapy is okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to talk to a therapist. It's okay to read some scriptures and memorize them and put the scriptures in your life, but sometimes you got to read them scriptures on the way to the therapist. Okay.
Listen.
I've been there. I've been
Yeah.
there. Okay. Now, since I started writing, I don't go see the therapist. I've saved some money. But I mean, I just found a different way of expression. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I was spending $70 to $100 an hour, Dre, talking to my therapist, and I love it. I love it. But writing has now become my new therapy. So I've become obsessed with it, and just being creative in the writing part. But
Yeah.
I really love that. No, I'm not okay. Bravery, bravery in writing that. So tell everybody that is, well, first of all, for everyone that is watching, if you have a question, go ahead and chime in now. We'll run your comments across the screen. If you have a question for Mr. Dre Hill, we will run that across the screen. He's going to tell us here in just a moment the different ways in which we can get in touch with him. If you want him to come to an event that you're having, for bookings or anything of that sort, he'll give his contact information here in just a moment. But if you have any questions, comments, anything of that sort, this would be the time for you to go ahead and run those things in, and we will put those across the screen. Okay. Tell me a little bit, Dre. Race in America, art exhibition 2022, MBEA second place winner. Tell me about those. What you have going on?
Yes. So both of those took place in my, I'm just making sure I get my timeline right. That was so long ago. I was like, what? Yeah, so both of those took place in my senior year of college. The Race in America art exhibition was a exhibition that was put on by one of the fellow students on campus, and it was really just like an open dialogue and forum and conversation about what it means essentially to be a minority, or to like capture the minority experience in
Okay.
America. And so there were, I think, 150 different artists from across the nation, students of the university, potentially alum, and then maybe just other artists of different calibers and profiles as well, that sent work in to be displayed. And I think it was run from like early November to the end of November, early December, something like that. It got press coverage in the local Springfield newspaper, and on one of their news segments, which was really cool. But it was really just like an opportunity to kind of dialogue with, what it's like to be Black or Asian or Hispanic or whatever in America,
Right.
and the various experiences. And it was so cool because you had like visual art, and then you'd have photographs, and then there were even a couple of poems and like comic sketches and things like that in there too. So there was a little bit of everything that was covered.
That's nice.
It was a great experience to be able to not only be a part and have my piece in it, but to see what everyone else had.
Mhm.
And I even bid on one of the pieces, or two of the pieces, I don't recall, by one of the artists that exhibited. So I have that. I'm saving that and unwrapping it for when I get into a different locale. But that was really cool for me too, just to have that experience. And then the 2022 MBEA competition is the Missouri Broadcast Educators Association, which is basically just a coalition of communication-based programs. So
Okay.
each year they do a competition, and I believe it runs from like middle school, high school to college. Don't quote me on that. I was in college at the time, so don't quote me on that. But
That's okay. That's okay.
so they had different categories of competition for communication-based things. So they had anything from like sports anchorage to news anchor to like, I think, script writing, potentially like commercial based stuff. And so they had an animation category. And at that time, I was working on my senior film, Solace. And our professor just recommended we all submit. He was like, listen, if you want to submit, let me know. I recommend you do. It doesn't hurt to. We covered the submission costs, so there was no like barrier to entry for us as college students to enter. So I said, you know what, nothing to it but to do it. I submitted. And then me and one of my fellow classmates, actually, our projects tied for second place that year. So that was a really cool experience as well.
Oh, wow. Okay. Very nice. Very nice. Well, I tell you what, it's been very nice talking to you, Mr. Dre. Just hearing more about you and what you've got going on. We didn't really get to talk that much because we were live in an event on the day that we actually met. So it's nice to be able to actually sit down and hear more about your work and just your perspective as a person. And you know, I'm very impressed with you at this stage in your life. You know, I keep saying you're young. I know you're not necessarily that young, but you know, younger than me, and the fact that you already kind of know where you're going, and that's a big deal. Tell us what's next for you, Mr. Dre.
Yes. So I'll speak literary first, then I'll kind of speak more broadly. So in terms of the literary, I kind of touched on this. I have a follow-up mental health collection that kind of takes the concept of no, I am not okay, and like blows it up and fully expands it. So everything that I cover in that collection, we microscope 100 times. We get really like down and dirty with it, from the pretending to be okay to the like slowly slipping into the depression or the anxiety or the substance abuse, whatever, to being in that dark spot, finding that solution, that call for help, and then what life can look like on the other side. And I end the book in a realm of like positivity, light, and healing, because I want people to understand that like you can get to a place where like your health and your wellness is managed. You know, you may not ever necessarily like live in a position where you don't ever feel depression again, but you might have the resources or the skills and the tools to manage it, so you don't end up in a place where it's like, I'm just in bed for 5 weeks until I come out of it, you know. I include, and no, I'm not okay as well, I include resources to a couple of like mental health hotlines, just so you have access to that, and I'll include that in this book as well. But it's just a deeper dive, a heavier dive, because I want everyone to understand that like, regardless, like if you experience life as a human, as a sentient being, like you're going to experience stuff that is going to really try you, really challenge you. And some people coming out of the gate already have that experience of mental health issues before they've even fully formed and developed. And so putting resources like these out here that people can read and digest, that don't have to be super heavy articles, but don't also have to be like a super heavy and like really long narrative either, to help hopefully open those dialogues, have those conversations, push the needle against the stigma, so we can have more honest conversations about like, yo man, like I am not feeling it, I think I need therapy. Who is your therapist? Like, do you like your therapist? Do they work for you? What are they like? Talk me through. Do you think that's someone I should try, or do you think they'd have a reference for me that I could explore? Things like that, because I think we need more of that.
We do.
So that's like the most immediate project, because that's the closest to being done, published. I have a project after that, that is a big collection of poems about love and relationships. And I tie that together with themes of water and space, and basically how those are like mirrors or reflections of each other. So it gets really meta, but I just tied it together from an astrological perspective, because I thought that would be kind of fun and interesting. And we think of water as a reflection and as a sea, you know, ocean, all that stuff, but we don't think of space that way, in the same way that it's expansive and we don't necessarily know what all is out there. And that's how love can be sometimes. It's expansive and it's reflective, and we don't know what's all out there. And sometimes what we're seeing is a distortion of the image that's actually there, and all of that good stuff. So I've been working on that. It's been an interesting writing experience, and it's definitely been stretching me. So I'm excited to see kind of how that takes shape.
Okay, very good, very good. So let us know your contact information. Where can people find you? If they want to do booking, where can they reach out to you?
Yes. So general social media stuff. If I'm on a platform, it's going to be Dre Hill Art. So DREHILLART. My website is drehillart.com. So, DREHILLART.com. And then you can do drehillart@gmail.com if you need to reach out to me for an inquiry for workshops, bookings, events, conferences, whatever the case is. And I try to get back to everybody as soon as I can. So it's typically 24 to 72-ish hour turnaround, give or take.
Very good. Very good. Again, Mr. Dre, thank you so much for being a guest here on my podcast. You're doing some amazing things. And listen, follow Dre Hill. Like, tag, and share this interview tonight so that someone can be blessed by this. He was very open, very transparent about a lot of things that he's got going on. And we definitely want to spread this interview so that other people can be inspired. You can we will have the link here on Facebook as well as on my YouTube channel. So continually just keep sharing that link so that people can see this. Please go to his Facebook, go to Amazon.com, go to Barnes and Nobles, go to everywhere. Just Google his name, Google his books. We talked a little bit about some of those books and some of the work that he's got going on. Support Dre Hill, the poet, the author, the writer, the entrepreneur, the educator. Again, thank you so much, sir, for being here tonight. Hold on for just a moment, Dre. I'm going to release the audience, but thank you so much, and just hold on for just a
Thank you
moment.
for having me, for sure. Thank you.
You're welcome. Just stay right there for just a moment.
The Voice of the Holy Spirit by author Stephanie M. Seaton. In this book, there are numerous testimonies of supernatural provisions and instruction, because she listened to the voice of the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is our comforter and guide.
If you would like to be a guest on the Stephanie M. Seaton Sunday Show, email Stephanie at stephaniemseatontheauthor@gmail.com.